Chapelets bought the property on Pritchard Hill in 1967, and there was a young vineyard on the property that had been planted in 1964 that was just coming into production. The winery was really built in '68 and completed in time for the 1969 harvest. Nobody built wineries that look like the three-sided pyramid. Today, it's still beautiful, it's still avant-garde all these years later, it's still very fresh. The first winemaker at Chapelet was Philip Tagny, and Don, I think Don was actually the assistant winemaker at the time, so it's very small production, very small team, very few barrels of anything in the winery since they were just getting started. It ironically became one of the most famous wines from California. It's considered to be one of the best wines ever made from California. And it was recognized in its day when it was young. It was recognized as the wine aged, and especially it has aged so beautifully and so gracefully now over 50 years that in a way it defies gravity that this wine could be so amazing. Those early wines that got a lot of recognition, the 69, 70, those were fairly young vines. Dark fruited, spicy, structured, and if you follow the Bordeaux model, if you have a special vintage, you just raise the price. Whereas Don's idea was he would put his signature on it, and that would designate that he said this is a special wine from a special vintage. The 1980 was the first signature, and then there wasn't another signature till 1984. So it kind of left these gaps, and it became a little bit confusing in terms of defining quality and ageability and just exactly what that signature meant.
And, you know, ever since 1990, when Philip came in, we've protected quality so fiercely that every vintage has a signature on it.
Because we had been replanting the old vineyards, we had invested in equipment and technology, and that allowed us to make this signature every year. If we had to make less, that was okay with Don. He felt like, yes, we have enough to work with. Let's let the quantity vary, but the quality stay the same or higher.
The philosophy for Signature Cabernet Sauvignon starts in the field. Here at Chapelet, we have two soil series, Hambright, which is a young volcanic red soil, and Sobrante loam, which surrounds the winery here. A little bit loamier, larger boulders. It's these boulders that we know and love on Pritchard Hill that are much larger that we move out before we replant the vineyard. And there's a little bit more water, a little more soil depth here right around the winery, but Hambright is a shallower soil.
So the vines really do struggle in the Hambright soils, and they make these really intense dark berry. That's where we get the blueberry and the blackberry and the rich tannins, lower yields. So they go a long way. Those are the real backbone of the wine, and I would say from the Sobrante is more the accessibility and this kind of rich, spicy, dark fruit.
We use those both to influence blend, to plant different clones. They treat the soils different, but then we also plant different clones and different selections based on each individual vineyard block to bring about what we think is the best expression block by block here on Pritchard Hill.
Not every block on the property points in the same way to the sun, and these may seem like minor differences, but we've learned over time that if the aspect of a block tilts to the east or to the west, that makes a big difference in the amount of sun, even though they may be side by side. But when a hill turns to the east or to the west, it actually affects the flavors and the ripening. So we'll pick to the top of a hill, stop, and then pick the other side of a hill maybe a week later. And we want everything to be perfectly ripe when we pick it and start making wine from it.
Once those grapes have entered the facility, and we get them in the winery, each year we modify our fermentations batch by batch. So it's trying to find the ideal endpoint for any individual block. And that varies enormously. How we ferment in, say, like vintage 2022 versus 2021 can be radically different and responsive.
We don't just take everything and just blend it together. That would be way too easy. So we'll spend a lot of time making sure all the pieces fit together. How much Petit Verdot, how much Malbec, how much Merlot, Cabernet Franc, which blocks of Cabernet Sauvignon. It's a process, and it's a fun process. We really enjoy that.
It's our benchmark, and it's the wine that the family has been making, for the last 55 years, back to '69. And that was Don Chapelet's commitment, is he wanted to make something that rivaled the Bordeaux's of the world, and that commitment to quality is alive and well in Signature today because of Don's commitments.